Franklin, graduated 1965, Scotland High School.
Alright. So, what do you remember the most from Scotland back in
Retrospect, looking back, realized that being in a predominantly, well, it wasn't predominantly, it was a black school. Lived in a black community, and a lot of the things that at the time that I didn't think were good for me or didn't agree with, you know, as I matured, got older, realized that a lot of things that we were taught, a lot of experiences, and I'm talking about the positive things, was necessary moving forward.
Alright. Are there any significant political or social changes when you were attending Scotlandville?
As it relates to education in Louisiana, and primarily it's the same thing across the country, it's been a systematic effort to really to destroy the public school system. You know, you had the influx of all of these private schools. Now we invaded the charter schools, and primarily that's an effort to separate from the black community.
Alright, so who was the principal at the time?
During the time I was there was Mr. Patty. Yeah.
Was there anything special about Scotlandville to you?
Well, I sort of had the area that I lived in, the area called Dixie. That's grew up in Dixie. That's presently where that main 3 or 4 story building, say Traveling Scenic, that general area at the time was a black mixed on the fringes community. When I say mixed, I mean, you know, white folks in there. We were kind of right in the center of it. And so we could go to Capitol, we could go to Scotlandville. You know, the district lines weren't so drawn so hard, and it didn't bother us a lot about where we went. And okay.
All right, what extracurricular activities did you participate in?
Played basketball, track.
All right, do you remember any significant event that happened during the time?
Yeah, there's one that's actually hadn't been documented directly back to Scotlandville, but recently, maybe 6, 7, 8 years ago, they did a TV special, and it was giving reference to St. Augustine and the Brother Monk being labeled as the first interracial athletic event, you know, prior to integration. They had they played a game down in New Orleans, and they kind of kept it private. And only with some of the you know, people from St. Augustine, some from Brother Martin, and it wasn't, you know, publicly open because at the time segregation was still going on. Now, the significant part, out of which game St. Aug beat, but now that same year, coming into right at Southern campus, St. Aug came in, was the top seeded team in the state, And you know, what the note was made that St. Aug had been undefeated that particular season, but that same season, the first round of LIA-LO playoffs, Scotlandville beat St. Aug. You know, and ironically, they never did mention it, and maybe it wasn't a part of the story. But undermanned, we didn't know it. And St. Aug, well, you know, it was a private institution, and they had, you know, had a real good team, but I think they came in a little overconfident. That'll happen to you. That'll happen to you in life.
Did you name some of the players on that team?
Okay, that's from St. Aug. Well, actually on that team at Scotlandville we had, at center we had Emmanuel Cannon. He's still in Scotlandville, still in the area. Had Henry London, Woodrow Copeland, Gerald Handy, Matthew Pearson, Arthur Jones, and Sonny Washington. And which is we ended up with about, when we got to state playoff, we ended up with about 8 players, which is unusually a short number, but we'd end up with some people being ineligible, had played the whole season, and then, well, it wasn't within the district, and during that time, you know, you may play a season, and they just came up right as we entered the state tournament, and some guys were ineligible, you know, which really, you know, caught us off. But we managed to, you know, to win a few games. Salvaged the, you know, the latter part of that season.
Okay, what impact did Scotlandville have on your community?
Oh, well, like I said, I actually lived in the other community, but I mean, you know, all of my activities were between Scotlandville, Southern University, and basically, you know, each black community within proximity of, say for instance, kids in my immediate area, and it was always a few that went to Scotlandville. So you identified with things that, of course, you know, in communities, your building block of your communities, family, church, school, that builds community. And everything else grows from that.
Do you think the community grew since you graduated from Scotlandville?
Well, there's a couple of things, and you know, this is personal opinion. During that era, I was a young kid going to school, and you had in the Scotlandville area numerous businesses. You know, I'm talking about black folk running businesses, and in part it was out of necessity. You know, segregation was heavy, and so the business people in Scotlandville, you had your grocery stores, you had your service stations, cleaners. Basically all the immediate needs, you know, because people didn't travel out. You know, well, actually the malls that you kids know about weren't even there. So the community supplied bus transportation, cabs, the whole thing, you know. Now, and I don't mean to be critical, but I often wondered, and then I'm talking later years, you know, a lot of things that you recognize and you question later is the Southern University was right there. And for whatever reason, and I'm talking about to this day, and I know it's been a business department there, but you would look for them to, you know, spearhead. If it wasn't anything but to have pilot programs to train people. And that seemed to be, and in all fairness, I don't know what the problems were, but that always seemed to be a little lacking. I mean, it's a better situation now, but if you'll notice in Scotland now, it's a few black-owned operated businesses, but I'm talking about there's nothing to compare with what was there during that time. You know, it was some problems with some of the elected politicians making some bad decisions. You know, promoting one thing that ended up, you know, really holding the community back. And that basically, you know, what I think about what has happened. Not to say that, you know, with the younger generation that this thing can be improved upon.
So during the time, you think you was a good advanced student?
Capable student, not necessarily applying myself as I should.
All right. Was the community the same before you attended Scotland?
Well, I always did admire, you know, black entrepreneurs, black business people, you know, getting out and running business. And then, like I said previously, out of necessity, built a lot of those businesses because, you know, you actually needed, people needed to get to work. People needed to make groceries. You had department stores that sold clothes and this kind of thing. You know, as a group of people, even right now, and it's better. But you often, and I'm not getting away from it, and I'll make it clear. You often wonder. You know, we often talk about the Asians and, you know, other groups that come in, and they come in our community and they do well. Well, I don't necessarily know the answer to it. What I think is that through education, through most cases, you know, we're taught to, well, you know, you finish school, which is a great thing, and you get a great job. But entrepreneurship is, you know, we are capable as anyone to have our businesses, but through the system itself, most of us end up working for, and understandably, everybody can't be in business, but